the discovery. The vastness of space had always filled Captain Julian Mercer with a sense of wonder. 20 years exploring the outer reaches of known space hadn't diminished that feeling, though it had certainly added a healthy dose of caution. Standing on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, he watched the holographic display as it rendered the anomaly they'd detected, a massive object drifting silently through the void. Preliminary scans complete, Captain, First Officer Naomi Wells reported, her dark eyes fixed on the data stream. It's definitely artificial. Approximately 1.2 kilometers in length, unusual alloy composition. No power signatures, no distress beacons. Julian stroked his salt and pepper beard, studying the image. The vessel, if that's what it was, had an organic quality to its design, all curves and asymmetrical protrusions. Nothing like the utilitarian ships of Earth's fleet or even the crystalline vessels of the Centauri Alliance. Any response to our hails? He asked. Communications Officer Rajiv Patel shook his head. Nothing, sir. If there's anyone aboard, they're not talking. Or can't, muttered Dr. Vincent Harlow, the ship's exobiologist. The lanky scientist had appeared on the bridge unannounced, as was his habit. Have you considered it might be a generation ship? Or perhaps a vessel in hibernation protocol? Julian considered this. Generation ships weren't unheard of, though they belonged more to history than to modern space travel. How long has it been drifting, Lieutenant Cheng? The navigation officer consulted her instruments. Trajectory suggests at least 70 years, Captain. It's moving at sublight speed, no course corrections detected. A derelict, then, Julian decided. Abandoned or, something happened to the crew. Naomi's expression hardened. Sir, protocol for unidentified vessels is clear. We should report this to Fleet Command and wait for instructions. Julian met her gaze. They'd had this conversation before, his tendency to investigate versus her by-the-book approach. We're 3 weeks from the nearest outpost, Naomi. By the time Command responds, this thing could be halfway to the Cygnus arm. I agree with the captain, Vincent chimed in, his eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. The potential knowledge to be gained. Wasn't asking for a vote, Doctor, Julian cut in gently, though he appreciated the support. Naomi, prep a survey team. You'll lead. Take Dr. Harlow, Lieutenant Cheng for navigation, and Security Chief Drake for muscle. I want you suited up and ready in 30. Naomi's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. Yes, sir. As the team prepared, Julian recorded his official log, noting his decision to investigate the vessel despite protocol. He couldn't explain the feeling drawing him to the mysterious ship, a mixture of curiosity and something else, something almost like recognition. The shuttle approached the derelict vessel carefully, its searchlights illuminating the strange hull. Up close, the surface appeared almost textured, with patterns that reminded Security Chief Marcus Drake of coral formations he'd seen in Earth's oceans. I'm not detecting any entry points, said Lieutenant Lin Zheng, frowning at her scanner. No airlocks, no docking bays. There, Naomi pointed. That depression in the hull, it could be a sealed portal. They maneuvered closer. The depression was a circular area approximately 10 meters in diameter, slightly recessed from the surrounding hull. I'm reading different material composition there, Vincent reported excitedly. Some kind of membrane rather than metal. Marcus checked his weapon instinctively. You mean like organic material? Doc, please tell me we're not trying to cut our way into something alive. All advanced technology eventually mimics biological systems, Vincent replied absently. Could be a self-healing hull design. The Arcturus colonies experimented with similar technology. Naomi made the decision. We'll use the laser cutter at minimum power. If we detect any reaction, we pull back immediately. The membrane, as Vincent had called it, parted almost instantly at the touch of the laser, peeling back like an iris to reveal a dark passage beyond. That was cooperative, Marcus muttered, unease evident in his voice. They docked with the newly revealed airlock and prepared to board. Environmental readings showed breathable atmosphere inside, though stale and cold. Despite this, Naomi ordered full environmental suits, standard procedure for unknown vessels. The interior of the ship defied conventional design logic. Corridors curved and branched organically, the walls a matte black material that seemed to absorb their flashlight beams. Underfoot, the deck had a slight give to it, like walking on dense rubber. "This architecture is incredible," Vincent whispered, his scientist's curiosity momentarily overriding caution. "No seams, no joints. It's as if the entire vessel was grown rather than built. Or carved from a single material," Naomi suggested, running a gloved hand along one wall. "The whole ship feels, I don't know, coherent somehow." Marcus kept his tactical light sweeping ahead, his other hand never far from his sidearm. "Anyone else notice there's no dust? A ship adrift for 70 years should be coated in it." They continued deeper, discovering chambers with purposes they could only guess at. One room contained what appeared to be control interfaces, smooth indentations that seemed designed for hands with too many fingers. Another held curved recesses in the floor that Vincent theorized might be rest chambers. "Still no signs of the crew," Lynn noted, checking her life sign scanner. "No bodies, no personal effects." "Maybe they evacuated," Naomi suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Vincent was scanning a section of wall that displayed subtle, shifting patterns. "These markings, they're changing. Almost like..." "Like what, Doc?" Marcus prompted when the scientist fell silent. "Like neural activity," Vincent finished quietly. "Like we're inside something that's thinking." A chill ran through the team at his words. Before anyone could respond, Rajiv's voice crackled over their comms from the horizon. "Survey team, are you transmitting any audio back to us?" Naomi frowned. "Negative, Horizon. Just the standard telemetry." "Why?" "We're picking up sounds from your location. Voices, but not in any language I recognize." The team exchanged glances. "We're not speaking," Naomi clarified. "And we're not hearing anything unusual here." There was a pause before Rajiv responded, his voice noticeably tenser. "Well, something at your location is talking. And Captain, it doesn't sound friendly." As if on cue, the lights on their suits flickered momentarily. The walls around them seemed to pulse once, almost imperceptibly. "Did you see that?" Lynn whispered. "Survey team, return to the shuttle immediately," Julian's voice came through, sharp with authority. "Something's not right." They needed no further encouragement. As they turned to retrace their steps, Marcus stopped suddenly. "Wait. Does anyone remember this junction? I thought we came down a straight corridor." The others looked around, disoriented. The passageway had indeed changed. Where there had been a single corridor, there were now 3 identical branches. "Lynn, check the mapping function," Naomi ordered, fighting to keep her voice steady. The navigation officer checked her equipment, then looked up with widened eyes. "It's showing 3 different routes, all recorded as the way we came in." That's impossible." Vincent's scientific detachment was crumbling. "Unless the ship is reconfiguring itself. Unless it's responding to our presence." "Stop," Marcus said suddenly, holding up a hand. "Listen." They fell silent. At first, there was nothing, then, faintly, they heard it. A sound like breathing, but magnified, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. And underneath it, almost at the edge of perception, a whisper of voices, speaking words no human language contained. "We need to move. Now," Naomi ordered, selecting a passage at random. "Follow me, stay close." As they hurried through the shifting corridors, the breathing sound grew louder. The walls began to pulse visibly now, the matte black material taking on a glossy appearance, like something wet. "Captain, we're having trouble finding our way back," Naomi reported, trying to keep the rising panic from her voice. "The interior seems to be changing." "Your life signs are fluctuating," Julian responded, the connection breaking up. "What's happening there?" "The ship," Vincent gasped, his scientific mind still trying to process what was happening. "It's not a ship at all. It's..." His words were cut off as the deck beneath them suddenly heaved, sending them sprawling. The walls rippled like liquid, and the breathing sound became a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through their suits. "Run!" Marcus shouted, grabbing Lynn as she stumbled. "It knows we're here." They fled through corridors that twisted and reshaped themselves, guided only by the faint signal from their shuttle. The ship, or whatever it was, seemed to be awakening around them, the passive derelict transforming into something active, aware, and hungry. When they finally burst into the chamber with their docked shuttle, they found it changed as well. The sleek metal of their craft was now partially enveloped by the same black material as the walls, tendrils of it wrapping around the engines and hull. "It's trying to absorb the shuttle," Vincent breathed in horror. "It's trying to prevent us from leaving." For the first time in her career, Naomi felt true fear, not the controlled awareness of danger that came with their job, but deep, primal terror. Because now she understood what they had found, not an abandoned vessel, but a predator, patient and ancient, that had been waiting for prey to investigate its lure. And they had walked right into its trap. On the horizon, Captain Julian Mercer watched in growing horror as the readings from the survey team's suits showed elevated heart rates and stress markers. The mysterious vessel's exterior was changing, the seemingly solid hull now rippling with movement. "Captain," Rajiv called, his voice shaking. "That sound I mentioned. It's getting louder." Julian moved to the communications station. What he heard chilled him to the bone, a cacophony of inhuman voices, rising in pitch and urgency, like a chorus of the damned. And beneath it all, a message finally became clear, transmitted not through technology but directly into the minds of everyone who heard it. The nightmare unfolds. The tendrils of black material continued to engulf the shuttle as the survey team stood frozen in horror. Chief Drake was the first to break from the paralysis, drawing his plasma cutter. "I'm going to sever those connections," he announced, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "Naomi, get the engines primed. The moment I cut us free, we need to launch." "Wait," Vincent cautioned, studying the tendrils. "Look how they're pulsing. They're transmitting something into our shuttle. Cut them wrong and you might trigger a reaction." The walls around them had begun to glisten with a viscous substance that dripped slowly toward the floor. The breathing sound had accelerated, becoming more like panting, hungry and eager. "We don't have time to be careful," Marcus replied grimly. "Whatever this thing is, it's fully awake now, and it doesn't seem friendly." Naomi made the decision. "Do it, Marcus. Lynn, help me with the shuttle. Vincent, keep monitoring that material. Tell us if you see any change." As Marcus approached the tendrils with his cutter, the ship shuddered violently. The deck beneath them rippled, sending them staggering. From the walls, new growths began to emerge, protrusions that resembled fingers, reaching toward the team. "Move," Naomi ordered, drawing her own weapon and firing at the nearest growth. The energy blast struck the protrusion, causing it to recoil momentarily before continuing its advance. They scrambled into the shuttle, Marcus slashing at the tendrils as he backed toward the airlock. Inside, Lynn was already at the controls, fighting to bring the engines online. "The systems are compromised," she reported, fingers flying across the console. "It's like the ship injected something into our computers. I'm trying to isolate it." Vincent sealed the airlock behind Marcus, but they all saw how the black substance was already seeping through the seams. "Whatever this entity is, it's adapting to our technology at an alarming rate. Horizon, do you copy?" Naomi called over the comm, "We're under attack. Repeat, the unidentified vessel is hostile and actively attempting to capture our shuttle." Julian's voice came back, broken by static. "We see it, vessel's exterior is changing shape, moving to assist, stand by for emergency extraction." The transmission cut off as the shuttle's communications system failed. Through the viewport, they could see the horizon maneuvering closer, its running lights bright against the void of space. "We need to warn them to keep their distance," Vincent said urgently. "If this entity can reach the horizon." "Too late," Lynn whispered, pointing. Tendrils had begun to extend from the larger vessel, reaching toward the horizon like grasping fingers. The massive derelict was no longer drifting, it was actively pursuing. On the horizon's bridge, Julian watched in horror as the alien vessel began to transform. Its once smooth hull was now rippling, extending protrusions that reached toward his ship with clear purpose. "Full reverse," he ordered. "Get us out of its range." Engines responding sluggishly, "Sir," the helm officer reported. "It's like something's interfering with our systems." Rajiv's hands danced across his console. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal, it's piggybacking on our own communications frequency. Can you isolate it?" "Trying, but it's..." Rajiv's words died in his throat as his console erupted in a cascade of symbols, flowing across the screen faster than the eye could follow. "Sir, it's accessing our database." Julian slammed his hand down on the emergency protocol button. Ship-wide quarantine. Shut down all non-essential systems, isolate the core computers. Alarms blared throughout the horizon as emergency protocols engaged. But even as the ship's automated defenses activated, screens throughout the bridge began to flicker with the same strange symbols that had appeared on Rajiv's console. "It's in our systems," Rajiv reported, voice thick with disbelief. "I don't know how, but it's bypassing our security like it isn't even there." A low, vibrating hum began to resonate through the ship's hull, rising in pitch until it became painful. Several crew members clamped their hands over their ears, faces contorted in agony. And then the screaming started. In the shuttle, the survey team heard the screams over their emergency channel, the desperate, terrified cries of the Horizon's crew. "What's happening to them?" Lynn asked, her face pale with shock. Before anyone could answer, a voice spoke directly into their minds, a cold, ancient presence that felt like ice crystals forming in their thoughts. "Your kind is interesting. Such complex minds, yet so fragile. We have been alone for so long. Waiting. Hungry." Vincent gasped, clutching his head. "It's psychic. Some form of telepathic communication." "More like telepathic invasion," Marcus growled, still trying to cut through the tendrils that now completely encased their shuttle. "It's getting into our heads." The voice continued, accompanied by flashes of alien imagery that burned through their consciousness, vast, dark spaces between stars, patient waiting, countless other vessels approached, investigated, consumed, civilizations rising and falling while the entity drifted, patient and eternal. "We feed on consciousness. On memory. On experience. Your kind is particularly rich, so much emotion, so much fear. Delicious." Naomi fought through the mental assault, focusing on the shuttle controls. "We need to break free. If we can reach the horizon." "Look," Lynn interrupted, pointing through the viewport. The horizon was no longer attempting to back away. Instead, it hung motionless in space, its running lights flickering erratically. And extending from its hull were new growths, the same black, organic material that had consumed their shuttle, spreading across the larger vessel like a cancer. "It's already infected the horizon," Vincent whispered. "Through the communications link, perhaps, or some form of technological assimilation." The mental voice seemed amused by their horror. "Your technology is simple to subsume. Electrical patterns, data flows, these are but primitive versions of our own neural networks. We have consumed civilizations whose technology would seem like magic to you." Marcus had stopped cutting at the tendrils, his face set in grim determination. "If we can't escape, we can at least fight back." He moved to the shuttle's small weapons locker, extracting emergency charges. "If this thing feeds on consciousness, let's see how it likes a plasma explosion inside its gut." Naomi understood immediately. "You want to detonate the shuttle's power core. Better to go out fighting than be consumed by this thing," Marcus replied. Vincent was staring at the black substance creeping through the airlock seals, his scientific mind still analyzing despite their dire situation. "Wait. Look at how it reacts to the plasma cutter, it recoils momentarily before adapting. It's vulnerable to extreme energy bursts, at least briefly. So we hit it with everything at once," Naomi said, catching on. "Lynn, can you access the Horizon systems from here? If we could coordinate a simultaneous overload of both ships' power cores." Lynn turned back to the console, fingers flying. "I'll try. If the entity hasn't completely compromised the Horizon's command protocols, I might be able to trigger an emergency purge of the warp core." As they worked frantically to implement their desperate plan, the entity's presence in their minds intensified. Images of previous victims flashed before them, alien crews from a dozen different species, their final moments filled with the same terror now gripping the humans. "Your resistance is curious. Previous meals simply surrendered to despair. This makes you more interesting, your minds shine brighter in defiance. Keep it distracted," Naomi whispered to Vincent. "Engage with it. Ask it questions." Vincent nodded, understanding. While he began a mental dialogue with the entity, probing its history and nature, the others continued their preparations. "Got it," Lynn finally announced. "I've accessed the Horizon's emergency protocols. If we time it right, we can trigger a cascading overload in both power systems." Marcus had rigged the shuttle's core to blow. On your signal, Commander. Naomi took a deep breath. Vincent, can you sense where its consciousness is centered? If we're going to hurt this thing, we need to aim for a vital point. Vincent closed his eyes, allowing himself to follow the telepathic connection back to its source. The images that flooded his mind were overwhelming, a vast, pulsing network spread throughout the larger vessel, but concentrated in what had once been the center of the derelict ship. There, he said, pointing toward the heart of the alien vessel. That's where its neural nexus is densest. All right, Naomi said, her voice steady despite everything. Marcus, set the shuttle to ram that section. Lynn, time the Horizon's core overload to coincide with impact. As they made their final preparations, the entity seemed to sense their intentions. The mental pressure intensified, and the black substance began to pour through the seals more rapidly. You would destroy yourselves to harm us. Fascinating. So much potential, wasted. Not wasted, Naomi replied aloud. Sacrificed. There's a difference. She nodded to Lynn, who activated the shuttle's autopilot and the countdown sequence for both power cores. They had mere minutes to escape, if escape was even possible. The emergency pods, Marcus suggested, pointing to the small escape capsules built into the shuttle's hull. If we time it right, the explosion might create enough disruption for us to slip past. It was a desperate chance, but the only one they had. As the countdown reached 30 seconds, they sealed themselves into the escape pods. Through the small viewports, they watched as the shuttle broke free from its moorings, the autopilot driving it straight toward the heart of the entity. The entity realized too late what was happening. Its mental voice rose in pitch, no longer cold and confident but shrill with alarm. No. You cannot. The shuttle struck the central section of the derelict vessel just as both power cores reached critical overload. For a moment, space itself seemed to bend as the massive release of energy tore through the ancient predator. The black material that had been consuming both ships recoiled violently, contracting like burned flesh. In the chaos, the escape pods were ejected, tiny specks hurtling away from the devastating explosion. Inside her pod, Naomi watched through the small viewport as the entity thrashed in its death throes, or what she hoped were death throes. The derelict vessel was breaking apart, great chunks of its bizarre material drifting away as secondary explosions continued to tear through it. The Horizon, too, was heavily damaged, but the black substance was retreating from its hull, seemingly unable to maintain its hold in the face of such catastrophic energy release. As her pod tumbled through space, emergency beacons broadcasting on all frequencies, Naomi felt a moment of triumph. They had faced something ancient and terrible, something that had consumed countless other civilizations, and they had fought back. But as she watched the fragments of the entity drifting in the void, a final telepathic whisper reached her mind, fainter now, but unmistakable in its malice. We are not one. We are many. And now, we know where to find you. The connection broke as the distance increased, leaving Naomi alone with the horrifying realization. They hadn't just encountered an alien predator, they had alerted it to humanity's presence in the galaxy. And somewhere out there, others of its kind were waiting. As the emergency beacon continued its steady pulse, Naomi recorded everything they had learned, everything they had experienced. When, her pod was recovered, humanity needed to be prepared. Because what they had thought was just a ship had turned out to be the vanguard of something far worse. And the screaming they had heard was only the beginning. 3 months later, a mining vessel picked up the distress signal from Naomi's escape pod. She was the only survivor of the Horizon incident, the other pods either lost or destroyed in the explosion. Her debriefing lasted weeks as Earth's Defense Command struggled to comprehend what she described. Some believed her story of a sentient, predatory entity. Others dismissed it as the hallucination of a traumatized officer. But deep in the secure archives of Fleet Command, a new protocol was established, Directive 157, immediate withdrawal and nuclear quarantine of any vessel displaying characteristics matching Naomi's description. And in the vast darkness between stars, the fragments of the entity drifted, some still containing traces of the consciousness that had nearly consumed the Horizon. Slowly, invisibly, they began to heal, to reconnect, to remember. They had tasted humanity now. And they would not forget.